But first, President Bush's final news conference. Newsweek's Howard Fineman is an MSNBC political analyst, and Ron Suskind is the author of The Way of the World. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. I want you to look at a bite now from the president today. This was, to me, the most exciting press conference in a long, long time. Here he is defending himself against the charge that he has presided over 8 years of moral decline in America's standing in the world.
I strongly disagree with the assessment that our moral standing has been damaged. It may be damaged amongst some of the elite. No question, parts of Europe have said that we shouldn't have gone to war in Iraq without a mandate, but those are a few countries. I tell people, yeah, you can try to be popular. In certain quarters in Europe, you can be popular by blaming every Middle Eastern problem on Israel. Or you could be popular by joining the International Criminal Court. I guess I could have been popular by accepting Kyoto, which I felt was a flawed treaty, and proposed something different and more constructive.
A moment of Nixon there, Howard, defending himself with a lot of self-pity, but a lot of, well, let's call it defiance. Tough.
Yeah, I know why you like this press conference, and I loved it too, because this is politics at its rawest level. This is a guy who's been there for 8 years, finally, at the end, being asked in grand terms to defend himself. And his defense is a defiant one. It's based on the idea that he made a couple of big, right, moral decisions by his lights. Moral decisions to attack not only in Afghanistan, but to attack in Iraq, even though he said it was disappointing. He said that today. It was a disappointment that there were no weapons of mass destruction.
That was a strange use of logic.
It wasn't just a disappointment. It was a catastrophe given what the justification was for going in. But be that as it may, that's George Bush trying to be West Texas. His problem is, I think he has a fundamental understanding of West Texas, at least according to the Texans I talked to. West Texas, you try the handshake first before you pull out the gun. He did the opposite.
Well, Ron Suskind, you've been a great chronicler of this administration, and it's get tough, 1% solution attitude. If there's the slightest threat facing us, blow them apart.
You know, draw the line between defiance and denial. I think this is a denial press conference. Denial is the last note of the Bush presidency. The fact is this man was overwhelmed before, in the middle, and at the end of his presidency. And the fact is that the post-9/11 moment where Bush acted with strength, as he says, you know, to confront the world, ultimately is his one bright spot.
Well, here he is defending it. I want you to pick up on this because I think there is two sides to every argument. His side of the argument is, look, I came in, we were hit. We were hit on my watch. All I could think about is never get hit again. Never again. So I put everything the United States had into the cause of defending this country. Okay, made mistakes. There wasn't WMD there. I didn't. Perhaps I tortured. Perhaps I did this. Perhaps I had Gitmo. But yuck, we haven't been hit again. Here he is making his case. I'm not making it. He is.
And in terms of the decisions that I have made to protect the homeland, I wouldn't worry about popularity. What I would worry about is the Constitution of the United States and putting plans in place that makes it easier to find out what the enemy is thinking. Because all these debates will matter not if there's another attack on the homeland. The question won't be, you know, were you critical of this plan or not? The question is, why didn't you do something?
Has he got a point?
I don't think he has a point. Here's why. What the president knows from his own intelligence briefing is that al-Qaeda has not been in an attack mode in the United States. There were attacks that have been called off, and they have said, we will be patient. The next attack will be bigger than 9/11. Bush knows that from his own briefings. To say the country's been safe, we haven't been attacked.
Wait a minute, let's come back here. Back to August of 2001, he got a memo that said bin Laden to attack inside the United States. He didn't act on that, and look what happened.
Well, I'm just saying no one should be patting themselves on the back that al-Qaeda has not re-attacked the United States. Bush knows that. He knows the al-Qaeda playbook.
Why haven't they attacked again?
Well, because al-Qaeda has said, and we have picked up on signal intelligence, they're going to wait until they can get a bigger WMD attack in the United States. They've called off attacks in the U.S. This is something the president and the vice president knows. My point is that to say we haven't been attacked and that's a mark of victory, Bush himself knows is not coherent.
Howard?
Well, I think it's politically potent, however. Let's be frank here. Let's be frank here. If he goes out of Washington, if he leaves Washington for Dallas, Texas on the 20th, and he's going to say there has been no attack, there was no attack on the homeland, a term that came to burden us.
I don't even like that word.
I can't stand the word.
How about America?
Yeah, exactly.
I would just say hitting America.
This country. How about the country?
This country?
All right, from 9/11 until January 20th, 2009, that is what George W. Bush is going to cling to personally and politically. I
agree, and he's basically putting down that acid test for the guy coming in, Barack Obama. I defended us since 9/11. You better be as good as me and successful as me, and therefore I would recommend you be as tough as me. Ron?
Right.
Isn't that what he's saying to him? You be tough on prisoners, you be tough on intel, and you do some eavesdropping, because the price of not doing all that stuff is you may get hit, and then they'll blame you for not doing what I did. Isn't that what's coming?
Well, they've mistaken this sort of brand of toughness for a real strategy. The fact is, what everybody understands, it's bled away America's moral authority, which is a source of true power.
That's what you have to get. That's what.
And Bush knows it, and he knows it in his gut. This is why this is.
I don't think he does know. I don't think. I don't think he
thinks the Europeans over in Belgium or Paris have a right to tell us who's right. That's what he thinks.
Well,
he doesn't know it.
I think he's in denial. I think he's in denial. I think we agree on that.
Let's let the president speak for himself. This was his cri de guerre, his goodbye kiss to his worst critics. Here he is, today's last press conference.
Do you remember what it was like right after September the 11th around here? People were saying, how come they didn't see it? How come they didn't connect the dots? Do you remember what the environment was like in Washington? I do. I've heard all that. I've heard all that. My view is that most people around the world, they respect America. And some of them doesn't like me. I understand that. Some of the writers and the, opiners and all that, that's fine. That's part of the deal. But I'm more concerned about the country and how people view the United States of America. They view us as strong, compassionate people who care deeply about the universality of freedom.
Well, that was the closest thing to fine rhetoric we've heard from that guy, and it was off the cuff. I think that's his passion. He could well be dead wrong, Ron, and a lot of people, and I think I generally agree with that, with you. But I have to tell you, he was passionate.
Yeah, I think he was. I think his mistake is in thinking that it's an either-or proposition between shooting and talking. The fact is the world is more complicated than that, and George Bush has never accepted the proposition that the world is complicated.
Yeah.
He thinks that people who like complexity are writers, opiners,
bad guys,
elites, parts of Europe. Me, you.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, and he doesn't understand that you need both things, and that you can't just say, I'm standing on this principle. You have to talk to the world about it constantly, and he has no appreciation. He has no appreciation for the world that his father inhabited.
I'll join you with this. Here's where I think I'm going to take your side more openly. Here he is talking about the tone in Washington. I believe this president and Karl Rove have a lot to do with the nasty tone in this town. I think they jammed the U.S. Congress back in 2002, forcing them to vote for that Iraq war by saying, here's the election next week, better vote now. In other words, get your war in on time. Here he is, the president saying it wasn't his fault.
I hope the tone is different for him than it has been for me. I am disappointed by the tone in Washington, D.C. It's just the rhetoric got out of control. Why? I don't know why. You need to ask those who used the words they used. And I would hope that frankly, for the sake of the system itself, that if people disagree with the President-elect Obama, they treat him with respect.
Yeah, tell that to Max Cleland, who lost 3 limbs in the Vietnam War, who they turned into a traitor because it was politically convenient for them. I mean, that kind of stuff, that kind of nasty politics, Karl Rove stuff, divide and conquer, go with your base against the center, is his fault, isn't it? Is that a fair assessment?
One of the great R&D developments of this administration is to build a political, tactical machine, the likes of which we haven't seen, in terms of message discipline and punitive action.
Right.
All across the landscape. And the fact is to say the sun rises in the west and the west and the west when everyone sees it's the east is to no, it's not just the war. They did it from the beginning, and the war gave them added opportunity to execute on a wider scale.
My point is it wouldn't have worked as long as it did without the war.
I agree with you.
Because the war was the rocket fuel for this machine you're talking about. And don't forget, right after 9/11, most people have forgotten this, right after 9/11, there were pictures that were sent out as a fundraising device by the Republican National Committee showing George Bush as Commander-in-Chief on Air Force One. Remember that? Karl Rove got slapped on the wrist for it. They took it down. He denied that he had anything to do with it in the end. But that, in essence, was the Bush political strategy for all 8 years of his presidency. They didn't have a strategy until then.
What about this sort of general know-nothingism about you don't call them French fries anymore, you call them freedom fries? Everybody else in the world is wrong, we're right. That sort of idiocy that was perpetrated for the last 8 years. Now we're rejoining the world. Hey, the French are no day at the beach. Beautiful country. They're not always the greatest people. But I got to tell you, nor are we. But this idea, America's right, everybody else is wrong, as a public doctrine, it's one thing to root for your country every day. It's another one to believe that you're always right and everybody else is always wrong.
We will always be a country of enormous strength. That's not going to change. When you match it, as other presidents have, with humility, you've got the right mix instead of my way or the highway.
He campaigned in the year 2000, 1990 and 2000, on a promise that we'd be a humble country in the world. We would not stomp around like the British used to do. Right?
Well, and
he promised that.
Humble.
It's
humble. Well,
it's only been arrogance.
I was taken with that promise. He did not deliver. Well, thank you, Howard. Lots more to say. Well, what an amazing moment today. It was a Nixon-like press conference. I'm not putting him down. What a moment of passion. We heard. Well, maybe you think I am. Well, let's put it this way. Michael Abramowitz of the Washington Post certainly ripped the scab off with that question. You tore this country down for 8 years, buddy. He had a response. Coming up, Roland Barrett.